Hello YouTube, this is Cody the Coin Raptor, and in today's video we're going to be talking about how high Bitcoin can go before the next halving in a couple of months, my expectations for the Bitcoin price, and the incredible demand that we've seen so far from the spot ETFs, and my expectation for that demand. We're going to go ahead and plug that into kind of a hypothetical framework and figure out how that will actually affect the price heading into the halving. But before we get to that, be sure to subscribe, be sure to hit that like button, and be sure to follow me on X. So Bitcoin went all the way up to about 52,000 today. Now, if we go and we take a look at back in history, the last time we saw Bitcoin around these levels was about December of 2021, and it's taken us all this time to get back to this point. That being said, it is absolutely historic. This run up here that we've had from about 17,000 is only matched, I think, in my opinion, by the bull run that we had back in 2020. And Bitcoin has spent very little time actually above 50K in its entire history, just more of a handful of months during the first bull run, and then another handful of months during the next peak there in November of 2021. Now, if we actually take a look at the total crypto market cap, you can actually see that we're still pretty far away from that bull run peak here. That actually went all the way up to almost $3 trillion in total crypto market cap. Right now, we're actually sitting at about $2 trillion or so. So there's still some significant upside left to go before we actually wind up hitting all-time highs. Altcoins are up. Stable coins, if you back it out a little bit, you can see here, have been on a nice little uptrend. DeFi has been up. And so we're starting to see just broad interest across the board for Bitcoin and for crypto. Now, I want to also go ahead and talk very briefly about Coinbase's shareholder letter they put out. Coinbase reported earnings lately, and they actually said that 52 million Americans own crypto right now. Now, if you do the math, at about a population of about 336 million, you get to about 15% or so. So 15% of the U.S. population owns crypto, and I think that's absolutely wild. So we've actually kind of moved from the hobbyist, and now we're moving on to the next level of adoption for mainstream America. Now, going back to the halving, we have approximately 2 months or so before the next halving. Now, if you go to the Buy Bitcoin Worldwide halving clock, you can see here that the estimated date is April 17th of 2024, and that is fairly close. And what we're starting to see is some intense buying momentum heading into the halving. And that's kind of my expectation for the Bitcoin price, is that we're going to continue to see this momentum as we get closer and closer and closer to the halving. Now, what I want you guys to think about here for a minute is that incredible demand for Bitcoin. If we go and we check the exchange reserve, the number of Bitcoin on exchanges, we can see that over the time period in which the actual Bitcoin spot ETFs were approved back in January 10th, all the way to where we are right now at about February 15th, we can see here that, let me get rid of the price, the exchange reserve has gone from about 2,096,000 down to where it is right now at about 2,073,000. So we've seen about 20,000 Bitcoin exit exchanges in that time that the spot ETFs were approved. Now, you can actually see the direct correlation when you put it against the price. As the price moved higher and higher and higher, you started seeing more activity, more demand come in from these spot exchanges, from these spot ETFs, as more demand for Bitcoin and those exchange products increased. Okay, so now another way of looking at this is I found on the Apollo website here at heyapollo.com, they have actually tracked the net Bitcoin ETF inflows from the time in which they were approved to now, and now you can see that it's actually up to 85,000 Bitcoin. So in the time between the Bitcoin spot ETF's approval on the 10th of January to now, we've seen an inflow of 85,000 Bitcoin to those companies that are that are hosting these exchange traded products. So that's basically 85,000 Bitcoin worth of demand that we've seen kind of spring up overnight. Okay, so this is taking into account all of the ETFs, including things like GBTC and IBIT, as well as Fidelity's Bitcoin ETF. Now, they also have some really cool stuff on here as well. If you guys want to check it out, definitely recommend it. They have the Bitcoin Holdings X GBTC, and they also have the Bitcoin Holdings over time as well. And you can kind of see that the slice of pie here for the GBTC has actually started to go down, while the other exchanges, the other exchange traded products have actually moved up over time. And they also have a real-time tracker of the assets and the Bitcoin held, and then the Bitcoin per 1,000 shares. So we're going to go ahead and take this, and I want to plug it into a hypothetical framework here. Now, assuming that the demand remains constant between now and the halving, so about 2 months or so, we saw since the ETF inception an inflow of over 85,000 Bitcoin, okay? And with that, about 20,000 or so Bitcoin have left the exchange in about a month or so. And the time between a month and today, we've seen a $9,000 price increase for Bitcoin. So I estimate that if we see the same level of demand, we could potentially see an increase of 40,000 Bitcoin demand, at least off of the exchanges, and this would correlate to about an $18,000 price increase between now and the halving, okay? Or it would even put it near $70,000, and that would put us at a new all-time high for Bitcoin. Now, this is just, again, kind of a hypothetical framework. There are a lot of different things that can go into the Bitcoin price fluctuations, and trying to predict it at this stage is a little bit of a is a little difficult. But I do think that based on the momentum we've seen and the incredible demand, that I think conservatively we could see $55,000 to $60,000 before the halving, so in the next 2 months. Now, there are some risks to this kind of projection that I'm making. All right, Bitcoin has really started to heat up, and if we go and we take a look at the Fear and Greed Index, we can see that the market has slipped from greed now to extreme greed. Okay, we're at 76 here. The market is heating up. We're starting to see greed take over. We're starting to see euphoria. And if we go ahead and measure the RSI, or the Relative Strength Index, that shows us basically the buying strength of Bitcoin, we can see that it's actually up at about over 80 right now on the weekly. So this is nothing short of almost like a record level of buying momentum, buying strength for Bitcoin. We've actually only seen it go up high recently, back in December, where it went all the way up to about 83, 84 or so. That's signaling extremely overbought right now for Bitcoin. Now, in the run-up from 2020, during the 2020 bull market, we saw it go as high as 94, okay? So it still has some room left to run. If this bull run is close to what we've seen for the previous bull runs, it still has some room left to run, but there is going to be a pullback, either in the near term, or it's going to be right after the halving actually occurs, okay? And then we will continue, I think, the move higher. But we have to realize first that buyers are starting to get exhausted. There is extreme momentum right now to the upside, but at some point the market has to pull back. Bitcoin's got to take a breather, and this all needs to reset before we can start making the next move higher. So either it's going to happen basically before the halving, or it's going to happen immediately after the halving, that we're going to see a fairly sizable dip for Bitcoin, and we could actually see it go all the way back down to maybe like about 45K, 44, 45K. It's definitely possible, and if that level doesn't hold, we could even see 40K, but I'm kind of getting ahead of myself right now. Just know that we are due for a dip, but I think in the near term, say 1 week or so, we're much more likely to see momentum continue higher, heading closer and closer and closer to the halving. Now, the other part of that I think is really important to pay attention to is the long-term holder supply. Now, the long-term holder supply, or the number of addresses that's held Bitcoin for more than 139 days, hit a peak of 85%. Now, that was back in December. And since then, we've seen it go down to about 82.6%. Now, that's not really a huge difference, but what we do tend to see in these Bitcoin bull cycles is that we have a large run up from the LTH supply, followed by a large decrease as these long-term holders sell near the tops. They sell near the new all-time highs. And then from there, the long-term holders tend to sell their coins, and short-term holders tend to take over after that point. So this right here is an absolutely fantastic indicator of the potential top of a Bitcoin bull market. Now, I'm not saying that we're there yet, but we are starting to see a little bit of weakness from long-term holder supply. So this is another risk that I've noticed that needs to be paid attention to. I will continue to monitor this metric and give you guys updates. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is Bitcoin options. So Bitcoin options set to expire February 23rd, which is about a week or so from now. It's really important to know what's going on with Bitcoin options in the options market. The options market right now, we have about $2 billion worth of call options and then $1.3, $1.4 billion worth of puts. Okay, normally the call put spread here is a bit more tilted towards the calls, but now we're actually starting to see that there's a significant number of puts. So bearish bets basically against Bitcoin have been on the rise. But if we take a look at the largest number of options, most of them are at about the $50,000 range for calls, and basically the market is setting up for Bitcoin to stay at about 50,000 or so for the next week. That's the goal for a lot of these Bitcoin options traders. They're looking at maybe 50K or so, and maybe even the next highest I'd say is about 52,000. So there's actually a pretty significant number of them up here in this region. So what that means is traders right now are mostly bullish. They're betting on the price to basically stay where it is within about a week or so. And that being said, the number of bearish bets is increasing, and they do tend to concentrate here at about 41,000, and even below that at about 37,000. So keep that in mind, guys. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the economic calendar. We've been talking about this all week, but tomorrow is an important day, and that is that the core PPI numbers are going to come out. February 16th. We saw that previously on Tuesday, we had the CPI numbers come in, and they disappointed. And basically the traditional market sold off, crypto sold off, and that was largely seen as a buying opportunity. It's entirely possible that tomorrow we'll see something similar. If these PPI numbers come in and they disappoint as well, then we could wind up seeing the market sell off tomorrow. But then again, if they actually wind up coming in lower than expected, we could see markets really start to take off, okay? That Friday exuberance kind of kick in. But let me know what you guys think about this, the hypothetical framework, if you really think that we could actually go to a new all-time high before the next halving. Leave a comment below, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.